Have you ever wondered what it is really costing you to always say yes, to always be available, to constantly adjust yourself so that no one feels uncomfortable around you? People-pleasing often looks generous and admirable on the surface. Others may describe you as kind, supportive, or easy to work with. But beneath that calm and cooperative image, there is often exhaustion, pressure, and quiet frustration. The hidden cost is not only emotional stress, it slowly affects your identity, your confidence, and even your long-term happiness. When your value becomes connected to how useful or agreeable you are, you begin to ignore your own needs. In this episode, you will not only improve your English listening and vocabulary at a higher level, but you will also explore an important life lesson about boundaries, authenticity, and self-respect. By the end, you may begin to see your yes in a completely different way. And if this lesson gave you something useful, I'd love it if you tapped like and subscribed to the channel. It helps you stay connected, and it also helps this little learning community grow. Every click really does make a difference. With love, let's dive in. Why do so many people become people pleasers? Many people assume that people pleasers are simply too nice or too soft. In reality, this behavior often develops as a survival strategy. During childhood or adolescence, some individuals learned that approval brought safety. Being helpful, quiet, or emotionally supportive may have reduced conflict at home or school. Over time, the brain connected acceptance with security. Saying yes became automatic, while saying no felt risky. This pattern does not usually come from weakness. It often comes from emotional intelligence and sensitivity. You learn to read the room, to anticipate needs, and to prevent tension before it appeared. These skills can be valuable. However, when they are driven by fear rather than choice, they become limiting. Understanding the origin of people-pleasing removes shame. It allows you to see that you adapted in the best way you could. But what once protected you may now prevent you from developing a stronger, more independent identity. What happens to your identity when you always prioritize others? When you constantly adjust your opinions and preferences to match other people's expectations, your sense of identity slowly becomes unclear. At first, flexibility may seem positive. You may feel proud of being adaptable and easygoing. However, over time, something deeper begins to shift. You stop asking yourself what you genuinely think or feel. Instead, you focus on what will maintain harmony. Your boundaries become softer, your voice becomes quieter, and your true preferences become negotiable. This creates an internal disconnect. You may feel as if you are performing a role rather than living authentically. The hidden cost is not visible from the outside, but internally, it can feel confusing and empty. Rebuilding your identity requires self-reflection and courage. It means accepting that disagreement is normal and that authenticity may cause temporary discomfort. Without that honesty, lasting self-confidence cannot develop in a healthy way. Why does saying no feel so uncomfortable? For many people pleasers, the word no feels unusually heavy. It can trigger anxiety, guilt, and even physical tension in the body. The discomfort does not come from the word itself, but from what it represents. Saying no challenges the belief that your role is to maintain peace and satisfaction for everyone around you. When you decline a request, you risk disappointing someone. If your self-worth depends on being liked, that risk feels threatening. However, discomfort is not evidence of wrongdoing. It is often evidence of growth. Boundaries are not aggressive acts. They are clear statements of personal limits. At first, they may feel unnatural or selfish, especially if you are not used to expressing them. but healthy relationships depend on honest communication. A respectful and calm no protects your energy and creates balance. Over time, it can even increase mutual respect rather than reduce it. How does people-pleasing affect your emotional health? People-pleasing requires constant emotional monitoring. You may find yourself analyzing facial expressions, tones of voice, and subtle reactions in order to prevent conflict. This state of alertness keeps your nervous system under pressure. You rarely feel completely relaxed because you are always evaluating whether others are satisfied. Over time, this can lead to emotional exhaustion, anxiety, and hidden resentment. You might smile outwardly while feeling overwhelmed internally. The issue is not caring about others. Caring is healthy and necessary. The problem appears when caring for others consistently replaces caring for yourself. Emotional health requires balance. You need space to experience your own feelings without immediately minimizing or ignoring them. When you begin to acknowledge your emotions honestly, a sense of relief often follows. You realize that you do not need to perform emotional perfection. You are allowed to have limits, needs, and imperfect moments like everyone else. Why can people-pleasing quietly damage your relationships? It may seem logical to believe that always agreeing will make relationships stronger. After all, fewer arguments should mean more harmony. But in reality, constant agreement can slowly weaken emotional connection. When you hide your true opinions to avoid conflict, others do not fully know you. They interact with a version of you that is carefully edited and filtered. Over time, this creates imbalance. One person adapts repeatedly, while the other becomes used to receiving comfort and flexibility. Eventually, unspoken frustration may build inside you. You might feel unappreciated, even though you never clearly expressed your needs. Authentic intimacy requires honesty. It requires the courage to disagree respectfully. Healthy conflict is not a threat to connection. It is evidence that both individuals feel safe enough to express themselves. When you reduce people-pleasing, some relationships may shift, but the ones that remain often become deeper, more equal, and more emotionally stable. What is the real difference between kindness and people-pleasing? Kindness is intentional and calm. People-pleasing is anxious and reactive. This difference may seem subtle, but it is extremely important. When you act from genuine kindness, you help others because you choose to, not because you fear negative consequences. There is emotional stability behind your actions. In contrast, people-pleasing often comes from discomfort. You say yes quickly because you are trying to avoid rejection, criticism, or tension. The motivation is protection, not generosity. True kindness includes yourself in the decision. It asks whether you have the time, energy, and willingness to give. People-pleasing ignores those questions. Before agreeing to something, pause and examine your internal state. Are you calm or are you anxious? Are you choosing freely or reacting automatically? Developing this awareness allows your generosity to become sustainable. Balanced kindness leaves you feeling aligned and peaceful, not drained or resentful afterward. How does people-pleasing limit your personal growth and potential? Personal growth requires visibility, risk, and sometimes disagreement. If your primary goal is to be liked, you may avoid situations where your ideas could be challenged. You might stay silent during discussions, hesitate to share creative opinions, or avoid leadership roles that require clear decision-making. This self-silencing protects you from immediate criticism, but it also limits your development. Confidence is built through action and experience, not through constant approval. When you consistently minimize yourself to maintain harmony, you remain in a comfortable but restricted space. Over time, this can create frustration because your potential is not fully expressed. Growth involves tolerating discomfort. It means understanding that disagreement does not equal rejection. When you allow yourself to speak honestly, even imperfectly, you strengthen resilience. Each authentic expression builds a stronger internal foundation. Gradually, your confidence becomes rooted in self-trust rather than external validation. Why do people pleasers often struggle with self-worth? When your sense of value depends on being useful or agreeable, your self-worth becomes unstable. You may feel confident when others praise you, but deeply discouraged when they criticize or overlook you. This creates emotional dependence on external reactions. Resting can feel uncomfortable because productivity and availability become measures of your importance. You may believe that if you stop giving, you will lose connection or approval. However, external validation is unpredictable. It changes based on circumstances, moods, and expectations. True self-worth cannot rely on something so unstable. It must develop internally. This process requires patience and reflection. You begin by noticing how often you seek reassurance. Then you practice validating yourself quietly, without needing public recognition. Over time, you realize that your value does not increase when someone applauds you, and it does not decrease when someone disagrees. This shift creates emotional stability and deeper confidence. What role does fear play in maintaining people-pleasing behavior? Fear is often the invisible force behind constant agreement. Fear of rejection, fear of conflict, and fear of being misunderstood can feel overwhelming. The brain remembers painful experiences and tries to prevent them from happening again. As a result, you become careful and highly attentive to others' emotional reactions. This strategy reduces immediate tension, but it keeps you in a quiet state of stress. Avoiding discomfort may feel safe, yet it prevents growth. Facing fear requires gradual exposure to small risks. You might allow someone to feel mildly disappointed without rushing to fix the situation. You might express a different opinion calmly and observe the outcome. Each time you survive these moments, your nervous system learns that disagreement is not catastrophic. Fear begins to lose its intensity. Authenticity may create temporary tension, but it builds long-term respect, emotional maturity, and stronger inner stability. How can you begin setting healthier boundaries without feeling guilty? Setting boundaries often feels uncomfortable at first, especially if you are used to prioritizing others automatically. Guilt may appear immediately, as if you are doing something wrong by protecting your time or energy. However, guilt does not always mean you are making a mistake. Sometimes it simply means you are breaking an old pattern. Healthy boundaries start with awareness. Notice when you feel drained, pressured, or quietly resentful. These emotions are signals, not weaknesses. Instead of ignoring them, respond with calm clarity. Use direct and respectful language. You might say that you are not available or that you need more time to consider the request. You do not need long explanations to justify your limits. Over-explaining often comes from fear of disapproval. Consistency is essential. When your words and actions align repeatedly, others adjust. Boundaries are not barriers against connection. They are structures that protect balance and mutual respect. Why is self-awareness the foundation of real change? Without self-awareness, people people-pleasing continues automatically. You may agree to something before you even recognize your hesitation. Self-awareness creates a pause between the request and your response. In that pause, you gain choice. You can ask yourself what you genuinely feel instead of reacting from habit. Are you agreeing because you truly want to help, or because you are uncomfortable with possible disappointment? Developing this awareness requires honesty and patience. You might discover emotions you have been ignoring, such as frustration or fatigue. Although this recognition can feel uncomfortable, it is empowering. It shifts you from reactive behavior to intentional action. Practices like journaling, mindful breathing, or quiet reflection can strengthen this internal clarity. The more you understand your emotional triggers, the less control they have over you. Awareness transforms unconscious habits into conscious decisions, and that transformation gradually reshapes your identity. What changes when you stop trying to control how others feel about you? A major breakthrough happens when you accept that you cannot control other people's reactions. You can communicate respectfully and honestly, yet someone may still feel disappointed or uncomfortable. That reaction belongs to them, not to you. When you stop managing everyone's emotions, you regain significant mental energy. Conversations become lighter because you are no longer rehearsing every sentence in your mind. You allow silence without rushing to fill it. You speak clearly without over-explaining. This does not mean you become indifferent or insensitive. It means you understand emotional responsibility. Each person is responsible for processing their own feelings. Letting go of control reduces anxiety and builds inner peace. You realize that approval is not something you must constantly earn. This shift strengthens your self-respect and reduces emotional exhaustion. Gradually, your confidence becomes less dependent on external reactions and more grounded in internal stability. How does authentic confidence replace the need to please everyone? Authentic confidence develops when your thoughts, words, and actions align consistently. Instead of adjusting yourself to match expectations, you respond from your true perspective. This alignment reduces internal conflict. You no longer feel divided between what you think and what you say. Authentic confidence is not loud or aggressive. It is calm and steady. It allows disagreement without panic. When you trust your values, you do not need universal approval to feel secure. Others often sense this clarity and respond with greater respect. Even when someone disagrees, the interaction feels more balanced. You are no longer performing a role. You are participating honestly. Over time, this internal stability replaces the anxious need to be liked by everyone. Confidence built on authenticity survives criticism because it is rooted in self-understanding. It feels grounded and peaceful rather than fragile or dependent on praise. What freedom becomes possible when you release people-pleasing? When you release the constant need to satisfy everyone, a new kind of freedom emerges. This freedom is emotional independence. You can care about others without abandoning your own needs. Decisions become clearer because they are guided by values rather than fear. Conversations feel more genuine because you are not filtering every word for approval. You still remain compassionate and respectful, but your compassion includes yourself. The hidden cost of people-pleasing was exhaustion, resentment, and confusion about your identity. The reward of self-respect is clarity, balance, and inner peace. You understand that disagreement does not threaten your worth. You recognize that being authentic may reduce superficial approval, but it strengthens meaningful connection. As you continue practicing boundaries and self-awareness, your relationships become more equal and stable. Most importantly, you feel at home within yourself without needing to perform or constantly prove your value. And if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss the next lesson. Your support means so much. It keeps this space alive and growing. With love. Thank you for being here, and I can't wait to continue this journey with you.